Hi everyone, this is David from EUVC and I'm super excited to bring you something special. It's EUVC Live from SuperVenture. SuperVenture is the place to be if you're serious about VC in Europe. We're talking about hundreds of LPs, VCs, fund managers, all hanging out in Berlin, connecting, debating, and yes, having quite some fun along the way with all the side events. But for this limited series, I did catch up with some incredible people, folks shaping the future of European tech, debating if anyone actually has an edge in venture, and tackling hot topics like defense tech, secondaries, ESG. And trust me, things go real. Sometimes funny, sometimes provocative, but always insightful. We'll hear from people like Andre from Backed, who threw parties with acrobats. Seriously. Matthew from Barclays, who gave us the lowdown on why defense tech isn't just about bullets and bombs. Joe from Isomer reminded us that you can't buy a beer with paper gains. Bjorn from the EIF brings some surprising optimism on European exits. And Jan from HV Capital, reminding us all how humbling the VC game really is. So if you want to get inside the conversations happening right at the heart of Europe's venture community, hit subscribe, stay tuned, and get ready. Because EUVC Live from SuperVenture is starting.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
Hello, my name is Andre de Haes, and I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Backed VC.
So Andre, Backed is a VC fund based out of London, backing bold founders. And you guys actually, part of your value add to these founders is a very strong community angle as well. And so we'll of course talk about that a bit. But give us a quick kind of overview of what are you doing here at SuperVenture? What are you looking forward to? What are you hoping to get out of this week?
So yeah, quick intro on Backed is, we basically do two things. We focus on frontier tech in three verticals where Europe is particularly strong, and where we think we can build a globally dominant business out of a European heritage. So we do fintech and blockchain infrastructure, we do manufacturing software, and we do computational bio. And in each of those areas, we have a dedicated team, a dedicated event series, and then we have a dedicated angel network. And then the second thing we do is we build community for founders, so that they choose us in order to belong to the community more than to just have, the VC fund as a partner. And the idea of that is that we build that community through real life events. So we do 40 events a year. 40. Almost one a week. We've actually got 5 this week. You're invited to some tomorrow night.
That's one per day.
And so this weekend is one per day. Some weeks it's less, but it's 40 a year now. So we took 20 unicorn founders to Morocco a couple of weeks ago. We took 40 founders to Portugal for 3 days last month. We did another offsite in Portugal. We did a conference in London last month. So that ties to your, the second bit of your question, which is what are you looking forward to getting out of SuperVenture? A lot. The biggest thing is actually our partnership with SuperVenture, where we partner with SuperVenture to deliver the speaker dinner. So we bring all the speakers from the conference, to a really special dinner with a lot of live entertainment, surprises. I'm not going to give away the surprises.
You have to give away a little hint.
But,
come on, give me something.
There's surprise acrobats, there are violinists, there's some of Berlin's best DJs. We're on a rooftop over sunset. And so, we've done that the last couple of years. So that's very special. And so what the reason that we do that is to try and give people an opportunity to, outside of the more formal bits of the conference and outside of the more formal bits of their years, right? We all spend a lot of time on Zoom calls, in one-on-one meetings, and that sort of LP-GP relationship is often a very formalized one. But really, if you're going to partner, you're doing it for probably 3 vintages or more, which is 20 years, because the dirty secret of VC is that no VC fund is done in its 10-year term. And so it's 20 years of trust that you're signing up for. And that trust gets built outside of, a 1-hour Zoom meeting. It gets built in settings where you can let your hair down and talk about how your family's doing. So that's why we do those events. We also do this sort of bigger party. We bring 300 of, the SuperVenture attendees alongside the leaders of the Berlin and German ecosystem to a party. And party sounds frivolous, but again, like it's a really special way of building deeper connections. Yeah. And then the other stuff I'm looking forward to is really revisiting, a lot of relationships that I've built over the last decade, here. SuperVenture does an amazing job of bringing a lot of the top LPs, a lot of the top GPs together. And it's such an efficient way of catching up with people. So I do every day I do about 15, 30-minute one-on-ones. Yeah. And it's just a very efficient way of catching up with a lot of the people that aren't based in London.
Yeah. You have a big week ahead.
We all do. I'm not special. Nothing special about me. But it's that's the best thing about conferences is the efficiency with which you get to catch up with a lot of people.
Yeah, and the relationship building, definitely. So you touched on a bunch of different stuff there, which I think are interesting because it feeds into my next question, actually. So immediately after this recording, you're going on stage for a discussion, very interesting discussion in my opinion, which is how to build an edge as a VC firm, of course. Give us kind of what's going on through your mind as kind of, what are the key messages that you want to leave the audience with? What are like the highlights from your individual perspective? People who aren't attending, like it's going to be a discussion amongst people. So there's going to be different perspectives and hopefully you come out of that conversation with new views as well. But going into it, what are you thinking?
So when I first discussed the topic, the thing that struck me is that no VCs have edge, right? It's the like outrageous hypocrisy of venture, which is in the same way that most VCs don't have a board and yet spend all their time lauding about board governance. Most VCs look for edge in companies and have no edge themselves. And why? It's obviously not because people are disingenuous or incapable, right? There's a ton of unbelievably competent people in venture. It's because it's actually very hard. When we look for companies, not just backed, but most funds, we look for differentiation and we look for a defensible long-term right to win. At Backed specifically, we really look for an N of 1. Are you the only company in your market building, what you're building? Yeah. And do you have a right to do that? Because you have a unique insight on the world. Yeah. And yet when you're a venture fund, you're raising dollars and you're selling dollars. And, the dollars that you're selling are not that different to the next fund. And so how do you really build edge? The only way to do it is to play the game by a different set of rules. And, what does that mean? Well, it means different things for different people. A couple of people have done it through content. You guys have done it through content, but if you have a really scalable podcast, we've done it through events. So, our vision at Backed is to build the Davos of the next generation. That's going to take time to build, right? I think we already have a bigger event, offering than any other venture fund in Europe. But is it Davos yet? No. And it's going to take another 20 years, but it'll keep compounding, and our ability to draw the best unicorn founders has grown a lot. Now we have most of the top founders in Europe have been to a Backed event. Yeah. All of the top funds, come every year to our Backed events. And so that's how we compound that, is that people are really keen, to get access to that. And then for founders, when we issue a term sheet, being part of that community and knowing that they can then get a term sheet from Sequoia or Andreessen in the US, because they all come to our events, that helps a lot. So you have to play the rules by you have to play the game by a different set of rules. And then you have to make a really long-term commitment to keep at it. You can't just, you guys know this from podcasting, you can't just start a podcast and hope that within a year or two it's got to scale. You have to do it for 20 years. Right? We've been doing it for 10 and we're part of the way there, but you have to commit really long term.
You're double our age, funny. We're 5 years old. Yeah, cool. It's interesting. So some of the people watching or listening to this, they might not be inside of venture like we are. They might even be considering maybe, doing some investments into venture fund or startups. any advice, kind of how to look for an edge, how to dissect what an edge looks like, right? It's an extremely hard question, I know, but I agree with you, right? Play the game by a different set of rules. What does that look like? Because it might look oftentimes like something very hard to kind of back in a way.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions within your question, right? And so I think, the one is like what constitutes edge. The second is like, how do you identify and diligence it? And the third is like, how do you know that you're right on that, right? So what constitutes edge, I think it's fundamentally, you eliminate the noise in the answer by saying like, is there a very clear reason why a founder will consistently choose you over any other fund? So we measure win rate, right? So since inception, we've had a 97% win rate. So at the beginning of this year, we'd issued 92 term sheets. We'd won 90 of them. And that's how we measure it. Yeah. Secondly, how do you diligence it? Yeah. Right. So you diligence it by saying like, is this something that this fund can truly uniquely do, right? So Harry Stebbings with his podcast, he's got to a level of like podcast downloads that not many other people have. There are certain like people in specific industries like Ribbit in Fintech that have like credibility in the Fintech space that really nobody else has. But unless you can really say you are better than everybody else in the world at that, then that's not edge, right? Then, it's differentiation among lots of others, right? Which is not true differentiation. And then how do you know that differentiation is maintainable? Well, it has to feel authentic, right? So for example, with us within events, my first business when I was at Oxford was an events business. Like I was at age 19, I was organizing like 2 events a week. So it's very natural and authentic for us to be doing that. Yeah. We take real joy from it. We have people in the team who are event specialists. So I think you need to judge authenticity. Yeah,
I like that. It's like second nature, right? In a way. Yeah. Final question, which is my favorite wrap up. Biggest learnings in venture. And I always like to frame it as not necessarily in the last year, right? But recently, right? Recent biggest learnings in venture.
So, I mean, there are... This could obviously be a 5-hour conversation. There are a ton. There's a meta one, which is to stay humble and hungry, because venture's extremely humbling, and you look like a genius when you get it right, but you make so many very humbling mistakes along the way. Deals that go south is one, but industries that you thought were more exciting and more mature than you expected, LPs that you thought were going to close and then give you a no. So it's an extremely it's an extremely humbling sport. In terms of some specific learnings, some recent ones is time is everything, and venture is a structurally screwed industry where you have too many stakeholders. As a seed manager, you invest in 30 seed companies per fund. You do that 3 times, you suddenly have 90 portfolio companies, and that's a huge number of relationships to manage. And then you have 60 LPs, and that's a huge number of people. Yeah. Like I've had 4 LPs email me already today asking for an update on something, and they're our most important stakeholders, so we need to honor them and reply with a thoughtful answer. So you're very, very stretched. And so how do you manage that? Well, I'm a big believer that your calendar is your most honest autobiography, and that you have to find ways to find leverage and eliminate noise. And so my biggest learning is on building leverage into our team so that I don't have to do the work that, was previously very time consuming. So we have a very capable COO and, 2 people in finance. We have 3 people organizing our events. We have someone doing a lot of our portfolio support, and we've built a lot of systems and automation. So as soon as a portfolio request comes in, immediately I send it into a chat. It gets logged, someone else deals with it. right? So I'm not making the intro to the law firm or to the, as soon as we have an LP come in with a request, it gets logged, someone else replies with a data room or whatever it is. So that's one, is build inherent leverage in. Second learning would be that our best deals have all been the ones where we were truly contrarian and we didn't invest alongside Index and Local Globe and Sequoia. And those are obviously great funds that I have huge respect for. But if I actually just look at our back portfolio, our best deals were idiosyncratic. It's when we invested with intellectual conviction into something that was truly non-obvious and into companies that had no competition, but in markets that were very, very large. And it took us time to lean into courage of saying, you know, no one else is looking at that. Like, we were very early into computational biology, you know, and we've now done 20 deals in that space. But for years, LPs said, really, like software-driven biology, is that gonna be a thing? Yeah. There's been no winners in that space yet, and now it's suddenly becoming a thing. But you know, it took years of putting a lot of money to work, you know, and risking looking stupid. You know, we were very early into optics. You know, we did something, a business called CoMind, first business to do non-invasive brain measuring, with a device that measures all the vitals in the brain, with just light. And suddenly now that company is becoming very large, but it took courage to put, you know, to capital to work there. And so I think it's, you know, be prepared to look stupid and be prepared to invest on the frontier. And that's where, you know, really category defining businesses are built. Like, do not be a sheep. Whenever we've invested in momentum, we regretted it. And then I think the third thing is like, there are some age-old truisms that you learn in other bits of investing by studying people like Munger and Buffett or Thorndike, who wrote the book Outsiders, and that you don't learn from looking at like venture cases around simple things like capital efficiency, you know, and that actually the best businesses just need really, really strong business fundamentals. Yeah. You know, and they don't need hype.
Yeah. Yeah. So you gave us really nice messages. I liked the calendar as your autobiography, right? Don't be afraid to look stupid. I like those two.
Yeah.
Andre, thank you for joining us here at the filming studio at SuperVenture, and hopefully we'll meet again here next year.
Yeah, David, thanks so much for having me. I'm sorry that I've had a raspy voice. I lost my voice over the last few days, but I'm getting some sort of odd compliments on it, so maybe I'll sort of try and keep it.
It sounds sexy.
Thank you. That's
it's a podcasting voice.
That's what I'm going for.
You're fishing for that.
I'm trying to channel a Tony Robbins. Maybe I'll talk like this forever.
There you go.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.